A couple of things come to mind. Justin Bieber, right? Justin Bieber, for some reason, comes to mind, maybe because of this fame thing we just talked about right here. You know, his fame began to spread. You know, and Justin Bieber has a hangnail, he makes sure he tweets it. Or he has a haircut and makes sure he takes a picture and tweets it. And he makes sure to tweet everything you eat or say or do, and make sure that your name is in the spotlight at all times so that people know who you are. And we've heard from actors that, you know, as a child actor, they're just on top of the world one minute, the next day they're out of a job and they come to the gate to work and they say, "You gonna let me in?" And the guard says, "No." "Well, I came in yesterday." "Well, not today." Boom, shut off, nothing. Fame is fleeting. That's why Jesus was telling his buddies, the demons, to be quiet, because he wasn't seeking fame at all. It's not what it's all about. Jesus, you know, he calls the disciples, and they come following him. And last week we talked about he may have known and worked with these people, Peter and John and others, beforehand. And then when the time was right, he said, "Okay, it's time, let's go." But they knew that this Jesus wasn't all about fame and fortune and making a name for himself. That comes later in a different kind of way. In John's gospel, Jesus is a lot more vocal about who he is as the Son of God. But in Mark and the other gospels, the synoptics, he's pretty quiet. And he makes sure that people really don't speak out who he is, because he doesn't want to let the cat out of the bag until he's good and ready, which is the cross and the resurrection, of course. Then people say, "Oh yeah, that's right." But for now, he collects his followers. He continues to collect his followers. And one of the first things he does, this is our God, who first thing he does is begin healing people, spreading the good news throughout the region. In this particular case, he speaks the words for the demons to get out. "Be silent and get out." Now, I speak those words every day to the demons in my own head. Be silent, get out. Leave me alone. Stop bothering me. I don't know if you're like that too, but there are demons that hold us back in our own minds. Just stop already. I'm done with all this. Come back another day. Rain, go away, come back another day, right? But Jesus is adamant about this purpose he has of going through the region and quietly, and sometimes with words and sometimes without words, making a difference in people's lives, even if it's one person at a time. We notice that he wasn't healing crowds of people at one time. This one case, his first case in Mark of healing someone. And it's not physical. It's more emotional and spiritual. And how many of us really, really need that kind of healing in our lives? And we crave it. We seek it. Physical pain can be healed. Sometimes emotional pain takes a lot longer to heal than that, if ever. We still struggle with stuff even in our 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s from our childhood. Back in the 70s, you remember the movie, the book Sybil? The young girl had 13 distinct personalities. Yeah, some of you, I know some of you are nodding your heads. She had this thing in her mind that she couldn't control. One led right after the other, and you weren't sure who was going to be showing up next. They all had distinct names, too. It was years later, maybe in college, I found out from psychology that we all have that to a certain extent, kind of multiple personalities, but on a smaller scale. Depending on who you're with or what task you're doing, sometimes you have to revert to something else within your mind to make things work. But not, hopefully, to the extent that it takes over uncontrollably, happens that you have nothing to do about it, but sit and take it and be a victim. Jesus was all about helping the victims who couldn't help themselves at most. Those who were stricken with certain diseases, with certain sicknesses that they couldn't control, wouldn't want to control, didn't want to have, because it not only excluded them from being pain-free, but also from being in the social graces and the social circles of who they were in the society where they were at. The demons. Jesus encounters many of those in his travels, among other things. During Lent, we'll focus on some of the healings in Mark. This year is the year of Mark. Most of our gospel will be taken from the Gospel of Mark. And during this 5 Wednesday nights for Lent, we'll concentrate on some healings, different kinds of healings. You find out that there are many ways that God will heal us. In some ways, we expect physical healing, and sometimes we get other kinds of healing, emotional possibly, or spiritual possibly. Oftentimes physical as well. We want other kinds of healings, and sometimes we don't get what we expect or what we were in for. One of the first acts that Jesus does is heal people. This is the kind of God that we have. The God that walks and talks and relates and heals and tries to unite people. When he's confronting the demons, the scribes are there too. So this is a throw down the gauntlet to the scribes as well, because there's a new sheriff in town. Oh, he doesn't say it as much. But now they've got their feelers up. This Jesus who speaks with authority, just from words. Even the demons obey him. Imagine they've tried for years and some healings that have never worked. And so this is amazing to them. It's amazing to everyone around. And as we know, sometimes we don't seek the fame, but it is bestowed upon us. Not me in particular, but people in general. And Jesus has to work with that. Work with that and kind of keep it subdued a bit, because that's not what he's about. He's not up there to take the limelight. He's out there to heal one person at a time, to teach maybe a few people. In some cases, crowds come up and they get him and listen to him. I was going to get that too, but that's thanks. Yeah, thanks. I forgot what I was going to say, but thanks, Bill. So as we continue in the journey of Mark, we'll have more encounters with this Jesus who is silent for the most part, because there's more important things. Fame is sometimes surface only. It's fleeting. And we know from reading our Gospels and knowing these texts that there's so much more beneath the surface. There's such a richness that Jesus gives to us, that Jesus, who he is, that we can't even fathom the depth to which Jesus comes to us in ways to heal us and bring healing to us and to our families. We have glimpses of this in our lives. We have glimpses enough to keep us intrigued, enough to keep us chasing the great white rabbit that we've seen before, to keep us going on our journeys, to know that we're not alone in this, that God is in this with us, that heals us of our wounds, of our sicknesses, of our illnesses, that Jesus is always and God is always a part of who we are. At text study, we talked about healing, and we talked about this person with the demons, and we think, that's interesting that, when you think of counselors who work with people who have real deep troubles and are really having a hard time, and sometimes through a lot of time, through a lot of relationship, through a lot of talking out, and sometimes with prescriptions that help bridge the gap for conversations, sometimes these demons can be put out in the open and released, at least subdued for a time. God works through many different ways. In the scriptures, it's very bold. Jesus is the one, boom, he's healing. Sometimes Paul is the one, Peter, and sometimes the disciples and others are healing. In other ways, it's you and me, folks. Sometimes we're the healing hands of God, simply by listening, simply by responding in kind action or whatever someone else may need. Jesus heals. It's very, very important. And he continues to heal. Let's keep that in mind, that Jesus is continuing to heal us in many different ways. Take a step back and think, whoa, I never realized where I was and where I am now. Big difference. Because God is continuing to be our lives, continuing to heal us. Thanks be to God. Amen.